Admiral Thexnari stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the blue planet grow larger on the main screen. His forearms crossed behind his back as he studied the primitive world before him. Earth, the locals called it. Such a simple name for what would soon become another conquest for the great Valdorian Empire. "Sir, we are detecting some unusual energy readings," reported a science officer, her tentacles dancing over the control panel. "The orbital structures around their planet seem to be powered by something we cannot identify." Thexnari's yellow eyes narrowed. In his 300 years of service to the Empire, he had conquered 47 different species. They all followed the same pattern. First they would try to hide, then they would beg. Finally they would surrender and become useful slaves to serve the Empire's endless expansion. Primitive species often stumble upon technologies they do not understand, he said with a dismissive wave. "Show me their defensive capabilities." The screen changed to display Earth's orbital stations. Thexnari had expected to see simple metal structures, maybe some basic weapons. Instead, he saw something that made him pause. The stations were massive, each one larger than his own flagship. They moved in perfect formation, and they seemed to bend light around themselves in ways that defied physics. "Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the planet," announced the communications officer. "Put it on the main screen." A human appeared before them. She wore a simple blue uniform with silver markings. Her brown hair was pulled back, and her dark eyes looked directly at Thexnari without fear. This was unusual. Most species trembled when they first saw a Valdorian warrior. "I am Captain Elena Martinez of the Terran Defense Corps," the human said. Her voice was calm and steady. "You have entered restricted space. State your intentions." Thexnari laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "I am Admiral Thexnari of the First Conquest Fleet, servant of the mighty Valdorian Empire. You will surrender your world immediately. Your species will serve the Empire, and your planet will provide resources for our continued expansion. This is not a request." Captain Martinez did not even blink. "Terran space is restricted. Leave now or face the consequences." The bridge fell silent. Thexnari's crew looked at each other in disbelief. A single-world species was threatening the Empire that ruled 12 galaxies? The Admiral's rage began to build, his skin changing from green to deep red. "Did this primitive just threaten us?" he asked his officers. "It appears so, sir," replied his first officer, trying to hide his amusement. Thexnari activated his personal communicator. Within minutes he was connected to the Imperial Command on the capital world of Valdor Prime. "Admiral, what is your status?" came the voice of General Kexthul, the Emperor's brother. "The primitives refuse to surrender, General. They claim their space is restricted and have threatened us with consequences." Laughter echoed through the communication channel. "A single world threatens the Empire? This is amusing. Make an example of them, Admiral. Destroy one of their moons to show them our power." "Yes, General." Thexnari turned to his weapons officer. "Charge the planet killer weapon. Target their largest moon." The bridge crew worked efficiently. The planet killer was the Empire's most powerful weapon. It could crack open a planet or turn a moon to dust. They had used it hundreds of times to convince stubborn species to surrender. "Weapon charged and ready, Admiral." "Fire." A beam of pure energy erupted from the flagship. It was white-hot and powerful enough to destroy anything in its path. The crew watched the screen, expecting to see the human moon explode into fragments. Instead, something impossible happened. The beam simply vanished. One moment it was there, crossing space toward its target. The next moment it was gone, as if it had never existed. "What happened?" Thexnari demanded. "Unknown, sir." The weapon fired correctly, but the energy beam disappeared approximately halfway to the target. "Run diagnostics on the weapon. All systems show normal operation, Admiral." Before Thexnari could give another order, every screen on the bridge activated. Captain Martinez appeared again, but this time her image was on every display in the ship. Her voice came from every speaker. "This is your only warning," she said. "Terran space is restricted. Leave now." "How did they get into our systems?" Thexnari shouted. "Unknown, sir. They bypassed all our security without triggering any alarms." The Admiral's rage reached its peak. "Open a channel to the entire fleet. All ships, prepare for full assault. We will show these primitives the true power of the Empire." 100 Valdorian warships moved into attack formation. Each ship was a kilometer long and armed with enough weapons to level a continent. The combined firepower of the fleet could destroy most planets. "Admiral," the science officer called out, her voice filled with concern. I am detecting massive energy buildups throughout their solar system. Power levels are unlike anything in our databases. Impossible. No single world could generate that much energy. Sir, the energy readings are coming from everywhere. Their asteroid belt, their outer planets, even empty space itself seems to be generating power. Thexnari ignored the report. All ships open fire on the planet. Full weapons release. 100 ships fired at once. Plasma beams, quantum torpedoes, and reality-warping bombs streaked toward Earth. It was enough firepower to destroy 100 worlds. None of the weapons reached their target. Every beam, every torpedo, every bomb simply stopped existing the moment it entered the space around Earth. The planet sat peacefully in its orbit, completely unharmed. Report, Thexnari screamed. All weapons fired correctly, sir, but they all disappeared before reaching the target. It is as if something is erasing them from reality. That is impossible. Captain Martinez appeared on the screens again. This time she was not alone. Behind her stood other humans, all wearing the same calm expression. You have been warned twice, she said. We do not wish to harm you, but we will defend ourselves if necessary. Your weapons cannot touch us. Your ships cannot leave this system until we permit it. We suggest you consider your position carefully. What do you mean we cannot leave? Thexnari demanded. His navigation officer looked up from his station, his face pale with fear. Admiral, our engines are not responding. We are trapped in some kind of gravitational field, but our sensors detect no source. All ships report the same problem. Sir, added the communications officer. Thexnari stared at the screen where Captain Martinez waited patiently. The human showed no anger, no fear, no emotion at all. She simply watched him as if he were an interesting specimen. What are you? He asked quietly. We are human, Martinez replied. We came to this system seeking peace. We have found a home here and we will protect it. Your empire has a choice. Leave us alone and we will leave you alone. Continue to threaten us and you will learn why our space remains restricted. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Thexnari looked at his crew, seeing his own fear reflected in their faces. In 300 years of conquest, he had never encountered anything like this. Outside the ship, the human orbital stations continued their silent patrol. They moved without visible engines, powered by forces that the Empire's best scientists could not understand. Earth hung in space like a blue jewel, beautiful and peaceful, protected by technologies that made the Empire's greatest weapons useless. Admiral Thexnari realized, for the first time in his long military career, that he might have made a terrible mistake. Emperor Vexthul slammed his massive fist onto the crystal table, shattering it into 1,000 pieces. The emergency council meeting had been going on for 6 hours, and the news from the Sol system grew worse with each report. You mean to tell me, the Emperor growled, his voice echoing through the great throne room, that 100 of our finest warships cannot defeat a single primitive planet? Admiral Thexnari's image flickered on the communication screen. Even through the transmission, his fear was obvious. Your Majesty, these humans are not primitive. Their technology is beyond anything we have encountered. Our weapons have no effect on them. Impossible. General Kexthul, the Emperor's brother, stepped forward. The Empire has conquered 1,000 worlds. We command 12 galaxies. No single planet can stand against us. I have served the Empire for 3 centuries, Thexnari replied. I have seen the fall of the crystal cities of Altara. I witnessed the burning of the hive worlds of Sector 7. This is different. The humans are not fighting us. They're simply preventing us from harming them as easily as we might swat away insects. Emperor Vexthul had ruled the Valdorian Empire for over 300 years. He had inherited a kingdom of 50 worlds and expanded it into the largest empire in known history. Never once had he faced defeat. The very idea that primitives could resist his will filled him with rage. How many ships do we have in the reserve fleets? He demanded. Approximately 9 million, Your Majesty, replied Fleet Admiral Zexnara, the Empire's military commander. And how many can we build if we mobilize all our resources? If we conscript every subjugated species and convert all civilian production to military use, we could field 10 million ships within 2 years. Then do it. Issue the conscription orders immediately. Every able-bodied male from every conquered world will serve in our armies. Strip mine every planet if necessary. I want the largest fleet in galactic history assembled. High Advisor Yexthara, one of the few beings brave enough to question the Emperor, raised her hand. Your Majesty, such measures would cause enormous suffering among our subjects. The economic disruption alone could destabilize the Empire. Let them suffer, Vexthul snarled. They exist to serve the Empire. If they cannot appreciate that honor, we will remind them. The conscription orders went out within hours. On 1,000 worlds, Valdorian soldiers marched through cities and towns, dragging away every young male they could find. Factories that produced food and medicine were converted to make weapons and armor. Farms were abandoned as workers were forced into military service. The Kythera, master engineers who had built most of the Empire's infrastructure, watched helplessly as their sons were taken. The Morphic Collective, psychic beings who served as living computers, felt the pain of billions through their mental links. The Xanthari warriors, already conquered and broken, were forced to train new recruits to fight a war they did not understand. On the mining world of Kara 7, the entire population was enslaved to dig for rare metals. On the garden world of Sylphia, ancient forests were cut down to build shipyards. On the ocean world of Aquios, the native sea dwellers were forced to construct underwater factories, poisoning their own environment. Meanwhile, reports from the Sol system became increasingly disturbing. Human ships had been spotted throughout their solar system, but they looked like nothing in any Imperial database. Some appeared to be solid metal, others seemed to be made of pure energy. A few appeared to exist in several dimensions at once. The humans are building something, reported Admiral Thexanari during his daily briefing. We can detect massive construction projects throughout their system, but we cannot understand their purpose. They are moving asteroids, redirecting comets, and doing something to their sun that makes our instruments go crazy. What could they possibly be building? Asked General Kexthul. Unknown, sir. Whatever it is, it operates on principles our science cannot explain. We have detected energy signatures that suggest they are manipulating space and time itself. Emperor Vexthul listened to these reports with growing unease. Deep in his mind, a small voice whispered that he might be making a mistake. But his pride was too great to admit error. He had built his reputation on being unstoppable. To back down now would show weakness to his subjects. Double the production quotas, he ordered. I want that fleet ready in 1 year, not 2. The Empire groaned under the weight of his demands. On the industrial world of Mechanos, workers collapsed from exhaustion at their posts. On the agricultural world of Harvest Prime, children went hungry as all food was redirected to feed the growing military. On the peaceful world of Meditation's Rest, ancient temples were torn down to make room for training camps. But something else was happening, something the Emperor did not notice. Strange signals began appearing on long-range sensors. They did not come from Valdorian space, and they were not directed at Valdorian receivers. Instead, they seemed to be aimed at the conquered species themselves. A young Kythera engineer named Tekmar was the first to decode one of the signals. Working in secret in the depths of a weapons factory, he discovered that the transmission contained technical specifications for something called a quantum disruptor. The plans were incredibly advanced, far beyond anything the Empire possessed. But what shocked Tekmar more than the technology was the message that came with it. Written in perfect Kythera script, it said, "Every sentient being deserves freedom. Use this knowledge wisely." Similar messages began appearing across the Empire. The Morphic Collective received mental techniques that could block Valdorian mind control devices. The Xanthari received tactical information about Valdorian military weaknesses. The ocean dwellers of Aquios received plans for weapons that could function underwater. All the messages came from the same source, the Sol system. Your Majesty, High Advisor Yexathara said during another emergency meeting, we are receiving reports of unusual activity among our subject populations. There have been several small uprisings, and our intelligence services report that unknown technology is appearing in rebel hands. Crush the uprisings, Vexthul commanded. Make examples of the rebels. Show them what happens to those who defy the Empire. Yes, Your Majesty. But sir, where could they be getting this technology? Some of it is more advanced than our own. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. Are you suggesting that someone is helping them? It is possible, sir. Find out who. And prepare the Grand Armada for immediate departure. We will deal with these humans once and for all. As the massive fleet prepared to leave for Sol system, none of the Valdorian leadership realized that they were walking into a trap of their own making. By brutalizing their subjects to build an army, they had created the very conditions that would destroy them. The humans watched and waited, their mysterious signals continuing to reach every corner of Valdorian space. They were not preparing for war. They were preparing for liberation, and across the Empire, on 1,000 worlds, oppressed beings began to dream of freedom for the first time in generations. The Grand Armada of the Valdorian Empire arrived at the edge of the Sol system like a storm cloud blotting out the stars. 10 million warships stretched across space in perfect formation, their dark hulls reflecting the distant light of Earth's sun. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Admiral Thexnari stood on the bridge of his flagship, now serving as the fleet's advanced scout. Beside him, Fleet Commander Gexthari observed the human solar system through the main view screen. What they saw made both warriors pause in confusion. The Sol system had been completely transformed. Where once there had been a simple asteroid belt, now stood a defensive grid that defied imagination. Thousands of stations connected by beams of pure energy formed geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. Each station was larger than a Valdorian city, and they moved in perfect harmony like dancers in some cosmic ballet. "Report," commanded Gexthari, his voice tight with barely controlled fear. "Sir, the humans have converted their entire asteroid belt into some kind of defensive network," reported the science officer. "Each station is generating more power than our largest dreadnought. What about their planet?" "Earth appears unchanged, sir, but we are detecting massive energy fields surrounding it. The entire planet seems to be protected by some kind of barrier we cannot identify." Admiral Thexnari had been trapped in this system for 2 years. He had watched the humans work, building structures that seemed to bend reality around them. He had tried to understand their technology and failed completely. "Fleet Commander," he said quietly, "I must advise against a direct assault. These humans are not what they appear to be." Gexthari's 4 eyes blazed with anger. "Admiral, we have 10 million ships. Even if their defenses are strong, we can overwhelm them through sheer numbers. Sir, with respect, you do not understand what we are facing here. I understand that the Emperor expects results. The entire Empire is watching this battle. We cannot return in failure." Gexthari activated the fleet communication system. His voice echoed across 10 million ships, reaching the ears of billions of soldiers from hundreds of conquered species. "Warriors of the Empire," he announced, "today we face a challenge unlike any other. The humans believe their primitive technology can stand against the might of Valdorian steel. They are wrong. We will crush their defenses, enslave their population, and add their world to our domain. For the glory of the Empire." A cheer went up from the Valdorian ships, but it sounded hollow in the vast emptiness of space. The conquered species serving as crew members remained silent. They had learned not to show enthusiasm for Valdorian victories. "All ships, advance to attack positions," Gexthari commanded. The massive fleet began to move forward, like a metal tide flowing toward Earth. As they approached the outer edge of the human defensive grid, something unexpected happened. Captain Elena Martinez appeared on every screen in every ship simultaneously. "I am Captain Martinez of the Terran Defense Corps," she said, her calm voice somehow reaching every being in the fleet. "You are entering restricted space. This is your final warning. Turn back now or face the consequences." "How is she doing that?" demanded Gexthari. "How is she broadcasting to our entire fleet?" "Unknown, sir. She has somehow bypassed all our security systems across 10 million ships at the same time." Gexthari snarled. "Cut the transmission." "We are trying, sir. She is using some kind of technology we cannot block." "You have brought a great army to our home," Captain Martinez continued. "We do not wish to harm you, but we will defend ourselves. Your leaders have made a grave error in judgment. We advise your soldiers to consider their positions carefully." "All ships, open fire," Gexthari screamed. 10 million ships unleashed their weapons at once. The combined firepower was enough to sterilize entire solar systems. Plasma beams, quantum torpedoes, gravity bombs, and reality-warping devices streaked toward the human defenses. Not a single weapon reached its target. Every beam, every missile, every exotic weapon simply ceased to exist the moment it entered the space around the human stations. The defensive grid did not even seem to notice the attack. The stations continued their peaceful dance, their energy patterns unchanged. "All weapons ineffective, sir," reported the weapons officer, his voice filled with disbelief. "Impossible." "Fire again!" The fleet fired continuously for 6 hours. Every type of weapon in the Valdorian arsenal was used. Planet killers, star crackers, dimensional disruptors. All were rendered harmless by the human defenses. Worse still, the humans were not fighting back. They were simply making the Valdorian weapons disappear as easily as a parent might take a toy away from a child. "Sir," the navigation officer called out, panic creeping into his voice. "We cannot retreat. Something is holding us in place." Gexthari spun around. "What do you mean?" "Our engines are operating normally, but we are not moving. It is as if we are trapped in some kind of invisible cage." Across the fleet, the same report came from every ship. 10 million vessels found themselves held motionless in space, unable to advance or retreat. They could see the human stations clearly, but they might as well have been looking at them from another dimension. "This is Fleet Commander Gexthari to all ships," he announced, trying to keep his voice steady. "Report your status." The responses filled him with growing horror. Every ship reported the same thing: complete inability to move, weapons that had no effect, and defensive systems that offered no protection against whatever the humans were doing to them. Captain Martinez appeared on the screens again. "Your fleet is now contained," she said simply. "You will not be harmed, but you will not be permitted to leave until certain conditions are met. We suggest you use this time to consider the wisdom of your actions." "What conditions?" Gexthari demanded. "Your empire will learn," Martinez replied. "In time." Admiral Thexnari looked at his old friend Gexthari and saw his own fear reflected in the fleet commander's eyes. They had brought the largest army in galactic history to conquer a single world, and they had been defeated without the enemy firing a single shot. "What are they?" Gexthari whispered. "I have been asking myself that question for 2 years. Thexnari replied. "I think they are something far older and more powerful than we can imagine. And I think they are trying very hard not to hurt us." "What do you mean?" "Look around you, old friend. We fired everything we had at them. If they wanted us dead, we would be dead. Instead, they have simply made us harmless. They are treating us like children having a tantrum." Through the view screen, they could see Earth hanging peacefully in space. It looked so normal, so innocent. But around it, the impossible defensive stations continued their silent watch, powered by forces that made the Empire's greatest weapons seem like primitive clubs. In the depths of space, 10 million Valdorian warships sat motionless, their crews slowly coming to understand that they had encountered something beyond their comprehension. They had come to the system as conquerors and found themselves transformed into prisoners, not through violence, but through the simple application of power so vast that resistance was meaningless. And somewhere in the human solar system, mysterious signals continued to broadcast toward Valdorian space, carrying messages of hope to oppressed worlds throughout the Empire. The news spread through the Valdorian Empire like wildfire through dry grass. The Grand Armada, 10 million ships strong, had been defeated without firing a single effective shot. Worse still, they were trapped in the human solar system, helpless and humiliated. On the industrial world of Mekanos, Tekmar, the Kithara engineer, stood before a secret gathering of his people. The hidden chamber deep beneath the weapons factory was filled with 200 of his kind, their metallic faces glowing with hope for the first time in decades. "The humans have shown us that the Empire is not all-powerful," Tekmar said, his voice echoing off the metal walls. "For too long we have built their weapons and maintained their ships while our own children starved. No more." He held up a small device no larger than his palm. "This is a quantum disruptor, built from the plans the humans sent us. With this we can shut down any Valdorian technology. Their ships, their weapons, their communication systems. All of it depends on quantum field generators that this device can disable." An older Kithara named Vexmar stepped forward. "Tekmar, if we do this, there will be consequences. The Valdorians will send punishment fleets." "What punishment fleets?" Tekmar replied with a grim smile. "Their entire military is trapped in human space. The garrison forces left behind are scattered and weak. This is our chance." Across the Empire, similar conversations were taking place. On the waterworld of Aquios, the native sea dwellers met in the deepest ocean trenches, safe from Valdorian surveillance. On the crystal cities of Altara, the surviving crystal singers gathered in hidden chambers. On 100 other worlds, oppressed beings whispered of freedom. The rebellion began quietly. On Mekanos, power grids started failing mysteriously. Valdorian commanders found their computers shutting down for no apparent reason. Communication links between ships and planets went dead without warning. "What is happening to our systems?" demanded Garrison Commander Lexthul, pacing angrily around his command center. Unknown, sir, replied his chief engineer. All our equipment is experiencing simultaneous failures. It is as if someone has found a way to disrupt our basic technology. Fix it. The Emperor expects regular reports on our production quotas. We are trying, sir, but every time we repair one system, 3 others fail. What Lexthul did not know was that Kithara engineers throughout his facility were systematically sabotaging every piece of Valdorian equipment. The quantum disruptors made it easy. One small device could shut down an entire factory's worth of machinery. On Aquios, the Sea Dwellers had received different gifts from the humans. Advanced underwater weapons that could destroy Valdorian installations while leaving the ocean ecosystem untouched. The native Aquians used these weapons to attack the underwater factories that had been poisoning their world for centuries. Sir, we are receiving distress calls from Installation 7, reported a communications officer to Admiral Kexathera, the local fleet commander. What kind of distress call? The entire facility appears to be under attack, but we cannot identify the attackers. The Sea Dwellers have no advanced technology. Send a patrol squadron to investigate. The patrol ships arrive to find the massive underwater factory completely destroyed. Where once thousands of enslaved Aquians had worked to build Valdorian equipment, now there was only empty ocean. The native Sea Dwellers had vanished, and with them all trace of the weapons they had used. Emperor Vexthul received the reports in his throne room on Valdor Prime. Each message brought worse news. Production quotas were failing across the Empire. Garrison forces were losing contact with their command centers. Mysterious attacks were destroying Imperial installations. How is this possible? He raged, his voice echoing through the vast chamber. These species have been conquered for centuries. They have no weapons, no organization, no leadership. General Kexthul, his brother, stood nearby with a worried expression. Your Majesty, we are receiving reports that unknown technology is appearing in rebel hands. Advanced weapons and devices that our intelligence services cannot identify. Where are they getting this technology? We believe it is coming from the Sol system, Your Majesty. The Emperor's rage reached new heights. The humans, they are arming our slaves against us. It appears so, sir. Double the security forces on all rebellious worlds. Execute any being found with unauthorized technology. Make examples of entire cities if necessary. The Emperor's brutal response only made things worse. When Valdorian forces executed 1,000 Kithara engineers on Mechanos, the remaining Kithara responded by shutting down every power grid on the planet. When Aquian villages were bombed from orbit, the Sea Dwellers destroyed every piece of Valdorian equipment in their oceans. On the crystal world of Altara, something even more significant happened. The Crystal Singers, beings who could manipulate matter with their voices, received a special transmission from the humans. It contained the harmonic frequencies needed to shatter Valdorian armor and weapons. Captain Silthara of the Crystal Guard had been conquered 20 years ago. She had watched her people enslaved, their cities burned, their songs silenced. Now standing on the highest crystal tower of her homeworld, she sang. Her voice rang out across the crystal plains, a song of freedom that had been forbidden for 2 decades. Other crystal singers heard her call and added their voices to hers. The harmonic resonance built and built until it reached the frequency the humans had provided. Every piece of Valdorian equipment on the planet began to vibrate. Metal armor cracked and shattered. Weapons fell apart in soldiers' hands. Starships orbiting the planet found their hulls developing stress fractures. What is that sound? Screamed the Valdorian planetary governor as his command center began to shake apart around him. It appears to be some kind of sonic attack, sir, replied his aide. Just before the roof collapsed on them both, across the Empire, the pattern repeated. The Morphic Collective used their psychic abilities to turn Valdorian soldiers against each other. The Zenthari warriors, supposedly broken and defeated, suddenly remembered how to fight and turned their training against their oppressors. But perhaps the most devastating rebellion came from an unexpected source. The hive worlds of Sector 7 had been completely sterilized by the Empire decades ago, their insect-like inhabitants declared extinct. What the Valdorians did not know was that a few survivors had hidden deep underground, slowly rebuilding their population. When the human signals reached the hive worlds, they carried genetic modification techniques that allowed the insects to adapt and evolve at an accelerated rate. Within weeks, new castes of warriors emerged from the underground tunnels, armed with biological weapons that could eat through Valdorian metal. Sir, we are receiving reports of insect attacks on the hive worlds, reported an intelligence officer to General Kexthul. Impossible. We exterminated all life on those planets. Apparently not, sir. The surviving population has somehow developed new biological weapons. Our garrison forces are being overwhelmed. Emperor Vexthul listened to report after report of rebellion and defeat. His empire, built over 3 centuries of conquest, was falling apart in a matter of months. Dozens of worlds had declared independence. Hundreds more were in open revolt. Your Majesty, advised High Advisor Yexathara, perhaps we should consider negotiating with the rebels. The situation is becoming untenable. Never, the Emperor screamed. I will burn every rebellious world to ash before I negotiate with slaves. Sir, we may not have enough ships to carry out such orders. Most of our fleet is trapped in the Sol system. Then build more ships. Conscript every remaining population. Strip every world bare if necessary. But it was too late. The cascade of rebellion had reached a tipping point. When word spread that the Emperor planned to destroy entire worlds rather than grant freedom, even previously loyal species began to turn against the Empire. The humans continued their broadcasts, sending technical specifications, tactical advice, and messages of hope to every corner of Valdorian space. They never claimed credit for the rebellions or demanded anything in return. They simply provided the tools and let oppressed beings choose their own destiny. Emperor Vexthul's empire, once the mightiest force in 12 galaxies, was tearing itself apart from within. And at the center of it all, 10 million Valdorian ships remained trapped in human space, their crews helplessly watching their civilization collapse through long-range communications. 2 years after the Grand Armada had arrived at Sol System, the Valdorian Empire ceased to exist. Admiral Thexnari stood on the observation deck of his flagship, looking out at the impossible human constructions that surrounded them. The defensive stations had grown larger and more complex over the months, but they remained as mysterious as ever. His crew had given up trying to understand them. Admiral, called his communications officer, we are receiving another transmission from Valdor Prime. Thexnari sighed. The messages from home had become increasingly desperate as the Empire collapsed. Put it through. The image that appeared on screen was barely recognizable as Emperor Vexthul. The once mighty ruler looked old and broken, his green skin pale and mottled. His throne room, visible behind him, showed signs of damage from recent attacks. Admiral Thexnari, the Emperor said, his voice weak and shaking. What is your status? Unchanged, Your Majesty. We remain trapped in the human solar system. The rebellion has reached Valdor Prime. Vexthul continued as if he had not heard the Admiral's words. My own Praetorian Guard has turned against me. The Crystal Singers are attacking the capital city with their sonic weapons. The Kithera have shut down all our technology. Through the transmission, Thexnari could hear distant explosions and the sound of crystal song echoing through the palace halls. The Empire's capital world was under siege by its own former slaves. Your Majesty, perhaps it is time to consider surrender, Thexnari said gently. Surrender? Vexthul's eyes blazed with the last remnants of his former rage. I am Emperor of 12 galaxies. I do not surrender to slaves and primitives. Your Majesty, the Empire is gone. Our worlds have declared independence. Our allies have abandoned us. Our own subjects fight against us. Continuing this war will only bring more death. The Emperor opened his mouth to reply, but the transmission was cut short by a massive explosion. When the signal returned, the throne room was empty except for fallen debris. Emperor Vexthul, last ruler of the Valdorian Empire, was dead. Admiral, the communications officer said quietly, we are receiving a transmission from the humans. Captain Elena Martinez appeared on the main screen. She looked exactly the same as she had 2 years ago, calm and composed. Behind her, other humans worked at stations that seemed to be made of crystallized light. Admiral Thexnari, she said, we offer our condolences on the loss of your emperor. You knew he was dead before we did, Thexnari replied. It was not a question. We monitor all communications within your former territory. We wanted to wait until you had received confirmation before contacting you. What happens now, Captain? Martinez paused as if consulting with others beyond the range of the camera. That depends on you, Admiral. You and your people have a choice to make. What choice? Your empire conquered and enslaved dozens of species across 12 galaxies. Those species are now free, and many of them remember the suffering your people caused. Some seek revenge, others simply want to ensure that Valdorians can never threaten them again. Thexanari felt a chill run through his body. Are you saying they plan to exterminate us? Some do. But we have made them a different offer. The former, subjects of your empire have agreed to allow surviving Valdorians to live on certain conditions. What conditions? Complete disarmament, dissolution of all military forces, acceptance of permanent monitoring by a council of liberated species, and exile from your homeworld of Valdor Prime, which will become a memorial to those who died under Imperial rule. The terms were harsh, but Thexanari understood they could have been much worse. And if we refuse? Then you will remain here forever. Your ships will never leave this solar system. Your crews will live out their lives in exile among the stars. Why are you offering us this choice? Your people could simply destroy us. Captain Martinez smiled sadly. Because destruction is not justice, Admiral. Your people were led astray by arrogant leaders who believed might made right. But your soldiers and citizens do not deserve to die for the crimes of your rulers. What of my fleet? 10 million ships and billions of crew members? They will be released at the edge of your former territory. Your ships will be modified to ensure they cannot be used for military purposes. Your crews will be free to settle on any world that will accept them. Admiral Thexanari looked around his bridge at the crew members who had served faithfully for years. They were warriors who had known only conquest and victory. Now they would become refugees in the galaxy they had once ruled. I accept your terms, he said finally. We thought you might, but first there is someone else who wishes to speak with you. Captain Martinez stepped aside, and another figure appeared on screen. This one was not human. Thexanari recognized the crystalline features of a crystal singer from Altara, but this being was ancient beyond measure, its crystal body bearing scars from countless battles. I am Elder Silthera of the Crystal Guard, the being said, its voice like music and wind chimes. I was present when your forces first conquered my world, 70 years ago. I watched my people enslaved, our cities burned, our songs silenced. Thexanari bowed his head. I am sorry for the suffering we caused. Are you truly? Or do you simply regret that you lost? The question hung in the air like a physical weight. Thexanari thought of all the worlds he had conquered, all the species he had helped enslave. For the first time in his 300-year military career, he truly considered the cost of his actions. At first I regretted only our defeat, he admitted. But these past 2 years, trapped here and watching our empire fall, have given me time to think. I have come to understand that what we called glory was simply brutality. What we called strength was merely the ability to hurt those weaker than ourselves. Elder Silthara studied him for a long moment. The Council of Liberated Worlds has voted. Your people will be allowed to live, but you will never again be permitted to hold positions of authority over other species. You will be monitored for the rest of your lives. I understand. The crystal singer faded from the screen, and Captain Martinez returned. Admiral, we are curious about one thing. How did your empire become so devoted to conquest? What drove your people to enslave others? Thexanari considered the question. Fear, I think. Fear that if we were not the strongest, someone else would conquer us. We believed that the universe was a place where only the powerful survived. And now? Now I have seen true power. Thexanari replied, gesturing toward the human station surrounding them. You could have destroyed us with a thought, yet you chose restraint. You could have conquered the galaxy, yet you remain here in your solar system. You have shown us that real strength comes from choosing not to use your power, not from using it to dominate others. Captain Martinez nodded. Our species learned that lesson long ago, Admiral. We learned it the hard way, when our own arrogance destroyed our entire galaxy. We came here as refugees, seeking a second chance. We hoped never to repeat the mistakes of our past. What happened to your galaxy? That is a story for another time. For now, your people need to begin their journey toward redemption. The transmission ended, leaving Thexnari alone with his thoughts. Outside his ship, the human constructions pulsed with gentle light, as mysterious and powerful as ever. In a few hours, the containment field would be lifted, and the Valdorian fleet would begin its journey home to a galaxy that no longer belonged to them. As he watched, one of the human stations projected an image into space, a holographic representation of the galaxy as it now existed. Hundreds of worlds showed green, indicating free and independent civilizations. The former Valdorian territories were a patchwork of different colors, representing the various species that had reclaimed their homeworlds. At the center of it all, a small blue dot marked Earth's location. Terran space remained restricted, just as it had been from the beginning. But now Thexnari understood that the restriction was not a threat. It was a promise. A promise that some powers could be trusted to protect rather than dominate, to help rather than harm. The Valdorian Empire had lost everything to their own arrogance. But perhaps in learning humility, they might finally find something worth keeping. Their humanity, such as it was, and the chance to live in peace among the stars they had once tried to rule. In the end, the humans' greatest victory was not the destruction of an empire, but the liberation of the conscience of its people.